week 4, chapters 5 and 6, followed by the review of last week's or week 4's quiz. Quickly going over, we were talking about in chapter 5 space, time, and motion. There's a difference between actual space and illusion of space. Actual space are actual space is the space that we move around in, the space that we exist in. There's artwork that exists in actual space. That artwork typically would be sculpture. The illusion of space is typically achieved or worked for in two-dimensional artwork. That includes painting, printmaking, drawing, and it is implied space. It is not real. So to create the illusion of space, we have relative size, objects that we're familiar with and how large they are in comparison to other objects that we're familiar with. Relative size. Overlapping. Objects that are closer to us are generally overlapping objects that are farther away. So the ones in front of the other ones. In this image, we have a big tree shrub thing that is closest to us. And then there's a row of houses. And then there's some sort of castle or cathedral. And then in the background are the towers of that cathedral. And so that is overlapping. Again, overlapping. The objects closest to us would be probably the pumpkin and the apple, and then in the very back would be this glass vase because every other thing is in front of it. Overlapping is relevant in abstract art as well. This bottle looking thing is probably the closest thing to us, to the viewer. Atmospheric perspective incorporates devices such as texture gradient, brightness gradient, color saturation, and the interplay of warm and cool colors. So in this painting, we have a gradient of brightness closest to us. It's more dull farther away in the landscape. We have higher contrast closer to us, so the lights are lighter and the darks are darker in relationship to each element. When we go back into the landscape, what would be the lights and darks blend together to create browns and grays. Cool colors tend to come towards us and warmer colors tend to recede, or sometimes it's vice versa. It's the intensity of the colors, of this saturation. So colors that are very saturated are generally closer to you. Linear perspective. Linear perspective refers to parallel lines that recede in space. We have 1 point perspective. This is an example, these train tracks. All of the parallel lines in these train tracks are receding into space. In this image, we not only have the tracks themselves, but we have the edge of the railroad ties, which are all receding into this area, into the vanishing point. And then we have the lines of the gravel and the grass and the trees. They all come down to a single vanishing point. That is 1 point perspective. Two-point perspective incorporates two sets of parallel lines that each recede into space, converging at two separate vanishing points. Side note, vanishing points, remember, are always on the horizon. The horizon is, of course, where the sky meets the ground. In this image, we have this building in particular that has two sets of vanishing points. Therefore, it is two-point perspective. All of the parallel lines on this side of the building point towards the left. And then all the parallel lines on the right side of the building point towards the right. There's actual motion in artwork. That's often seen in kinetic sculpture. Sculpture that actually moves. Then in two-dimensional artwork such as painting and such as this painting, there is the illusion of motion. The artist in this painting, for this painting, created the illusion of motion by blurring the lines in a horizontal way, really suggesting that the woman is coming down the stairs with a bit of speed. Again, the illusion of motion. This is achieved through repetition of form. This image has an illusion of motion because of the science of optics. We see motion when we look at this because our brain has a hard time understanding what we're looking at, and the lines start to dance around. Implied motion occurs when artists indicate motion without showing it. We have four balls in the air. We have an arm. We have trees. We have a sky. We know that balls thrown in the air come to the ground. That is implied motion because we understand physics. This is implied motion because of the shadows of the lines and the movements of the dresses, and the movements of really the bodies are suggested by sort of the blurriness and the idea that there's a history of the dress being in a place where it isn't now. That's what the shadows of lines sort of represent. Implied time is the portrayal or suggestion of a passage of time. That's different than implied motion in that implied motion is something that's actually feels like it's actually moving. Implied time is more like storytelling. We know that there's a series of events and one event occurred and then others occurred as a result of the first event. Implied time. Chapter 6, more principles of design. Here we talk about unity and variety, focal point, principles of balance, rhythm, and scale. This image is unified in that this artwork is unified in that is a series of photographs that are hung in a grid. The photographs are the same size and same shape, and they are hung in a grid. It is also unified because of the content of and subject matter of the photos, the frame photos. So these are conceptually unified as well because they're all photos of volcanoes. So unity refers to a piece that has a oneness or a wholeness. Variety refers to variety in the artwork. Oftentimes, unified pieces add elements of variety in order to make the artwork interesting. This artwork is unified because there is a predictable pattern in which the little amoeba shapes are painted onto the canvas. But it has variety to it because the amoebas are different colors, slightly different, but because they're all organized in the pattern that they are, this variety becomes unified. This painting shows variety based on the subject matter, the people in the painting. It really shows diversity on a subway car, and that diversity is sort of evidence of variety. So again, artworks can be unified because of the way that they're displayed. We have a grid in this one. They're also, again, this one's similar to the volcanoes, is unified because they're all rocks or small islands coming up out of the water. Color harmony creates unity. So we have cool colors, purples and blues and greens, all on the cool side of the spectrum. And then we have a complementary yellow color, complementary to the purple. Recurring elements create unity. So this is a fold-out book that is conceptually unified. Each photo in this book is technically different, but they all make sense together because of the concept being a photo of every building on Sunset Strip in Los Angeles. There are different methods for creating focal points. One of the methods is accentuating shapes. Another method is intensifying color. The focal point of this painting is the person in the middle that has the most saturation. It's where the most saturation is in the painting. So your eyes are drawn towards the middle. Directional line. So what are the different types of lines? We have actual lines, we have implied lines, we have psychological lines. This painting employs each of those elements, and they all seem to converge right around the face of the child. Psychological being the eyes between the Orman and the child. Actual lines which follow these curves, and implied lines which would be the fact that this is sort of going in that direction. You can create a line that goes from here to the fold of the dress, all in the shadow of the baby's head. An implied line. Strategically placed objects can be a focal point. This painting has perhaps two focal points, one of which being the giant glass of absinthe, and the other being the very drunken look of that woman's face. So it's the relationship between those objects that create a focal point. Isolating an object. So the focal point of this painting, there might be a couple focal points, but in this example, the woman sitting down on the right, because she is separate from the rest of the group. The focal point of this photograph is this person who has the papers flying out of their hand, Why is that? That is because we have implied lines where you can follow the paths of the papers that go down to the guy. This painting might have two focal points. I'm very drawn to the face of this woman, but this is an interesting placed object, you know, that the severed head of somebody, and I also appreciate the path that they take to go between the woman's face and the severed head. Principles of balance. There is symmetrical balance, such as this photograph, bilateral symmetry and just symmetry. So then this is a horizontal balance because the object or the photograph is divided in two. It's divided vertically, but it's horizontal because the image on the left has a similar weight and balance to the image on the right. So because we're talking about left and right, that is horizontal balance. Asymmetrical balance. We have objects of different weight and size, but they seem to be, balanced appropriately, even though it is asymmetrical. This is another example of horizontal balance. Things are not the same on the left and on the right, but we do have, from this point down, is about the same size as from this point down and over. So that is horizontal balance on the left and on the right. Vertical balance, balanced on the top and balanced on the bottom with a horizontal line. Vertical balance. Diagonal balance, balanced, this can be on either corners, but two objects or elements of interest in this photo, for example, and we have one on the top left, one on the bottom right, creating a diagonal balance. Radial balance is like a wagon wheel where everything radiates from the center. This is radial balance. Imbalance are artworks that are simply not balanced. Rhythm is an element of design with a recurring theme of perhaps mark making or objects. You can predict where the next mark might be. That is rhythm. There is also alternating rhythm. Again, you can predict where the next marks, or in this instance, colors might be. But the truth of the matter is that that it alternates between blue and green and blue, and then green. It might be green on the other side, but then we have beige and color and beige and color and beige and color, beige and color. It's alternating rhythm. Progressive rhythm is when elements become predictably closer or farther apart. So we have the stair steps here that are of a certain height and distance, top to bottom, but they become closer together as they go to the top. Again, a rhythm where we are expecting the poles for this fence to be in predictable places going all the way through the landscape. Scale, the relative size of an object compared to other objects or known sizes. So we have a giant hippo with normal sized people. We have an understanding of how large that hippo is because we know how large a person is. Hierarchical scale, an element of design where there is a level of importance based upon, or a strategy of design, where there is a level of importance based upon how large an object is compared to how perhaps small an object is. And then this is another object that works with scale, or a distortion of scale. We have a muscle man carrying a giant lollipop, and then what would be a giant canned ham on the table, and so on. All right, that's it for the reviews of chapters 5 and 6. Let's talk about the quiz. On the quiz, we were speaking about a painting by Rawson Crowe, an excellent artist, if you ask me. Does the artwork contain actual space or the illusion of space? Well, the simple answer is it's the illusion of space. Why is that? It is the illusion of space because it is a painting. I see depth, I see perspective, I even see atmospheric perspective in it, but it is the illusion of space. If it was a sculpture, it would be actual space. List the design elements contributing to the illusion of space. So let's talk about, again, atmospheric perspective, linear perspective, and so on. There's a texture here that tends to get smaller. The width of the black lines are narrower farther in the back. The saturation of the pink, yes, it's still saturated, but it starts getting muddy the farther back it goes. There's overlapping. This column overlaps whatever signage and stuff is back there, and signage over here. Whatever this is overlapping these things. I believe that there is linear perspective in here, and that would be these, like, say the base of this column to the base of whatever that is, and the bases here, they seem to be going back to a vanishing point right around here. It's okay if you didn't get linear perspective in here. It's kind of a difficult one to see, but I think you can make an argument that it's there. Is there time or motion in this artwork? Is it actual or implied? I would say that there is a feeling of motion, and that has to do with the drips of the paint, the spatters, and that is that's where I would say there is the illusion of motion, and I wouldn't say there's the illusion of time. So those are the elements, and so the answer is implied motion. Is there unity and or variety in the artwork? I would say that the artwork is unified because the crazy pattern goes all over the painting, but there is variety in mark making, and there is variety in how the pink interplays with the rest of the pattern. Where is the focal point of the artwork and why? This is perhaps a matter of opinion on this painting, but I would say that the focal point is probably this guy down here. Why do I think that? It has to do with the scale of him. It has to do with the saturation of him. And just sort of the general placement here. It is where my eyes keep going. Is the artwork balanced? Is it pictorially balanced? Is there imbalance? Well, it's not actually balanced because that would refer to an actual sculpture or an actual three-dimensional object. Pictorially balanced, yeah, I'd say it's balanced. In what way is it balanced? Let's see. I think that I see a division here that I could just about carry this line all the way up, and that seems to be going right down the middle. I feel like there's a similar weight to the left and to the right side of the canvas. So I think I would make an argument that this image has a horizontal balance to it. I mean, frankly, if the line goes through the center of this character here, up, we have a pink splotch, pink splotch, pink, 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 pink. This one's moved in a little bit, but they're all generally about the same place. So again, that's another argument for horizontal balance. You may have found other balances if you, in your answers, gave a solid backing to how it was balanced, then you would get that right. I may comment on it, but you would get the points for that. That goes for the focal point as well. If you make an argument that really defines the focal point in a place where you really think it is, good work. You'll get the points for that. That's it for the review. Go ahead and watch the lecture for week 5. And then there is no quiz this week, so go ahead and jump right to the exercises which are due this week.